Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time before smartphones, indoor plumbing, or even socks, to a dusty stretch of ancient China where one of the most colossal feats in human history was built mostly by people who really didn't want to be there. You open your eyes. There's grit in your mouth. Your tongue feels like a sun-baked leather strap, and your back? It already hates you. You're not in your bed anymore, you're in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by strangers who look equally lost and equally miserable. Welcome to the workforce responsible for building the Great Wall of China. Your first reality check. You're not here by choice. Maybe you committed a crime, or maybe your village simply didn't pay enough taxes. The emperor's men came, pointed, and boom, you were labor. That's how conscription worked in the Qin dynasty. Your fate was sealed by a clipboard and a sword. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while we're at it, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city and local time down in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first day begins with a scream. Someone's already dislocated a shoulder hauling stone. You're issued nothing. No tools, no boots, not even a name badge. Just a barked order. Dig. The sun's not up yet. The dust is already in your lungs. You try to pace yourself, but there's no such thing. You dig or you're beaten. The foreman yells in a dialect you barely understand, but his whip speaks every language. That man was probably a soldier 2 weeks ago now. His job is to keep the living alive and the lazy very dead. You look around and realize that everyone here has the same hollow stare. You will not be special. Here's your first mainstream fact to chew on like that rock-hard millet they call breakfast. The Great Wall isn't a single wall. It's more like a messy quilt of fortifications built over centuries, from the 7th century BCE through the Ming Dynasty. But right now, you're in the Qin Dynasty, around 220 BCE. That's the reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the guy famous for unifying China and also burying entire armies of clay soldiers. Spoiler alert, he didn't treat his real soldiers much better. Historians still argue whether this original version of the wall even worked as intended. Some say it was more for show than actual defense. But you don't get to argue. You just get to move dirt. And about that dirt, it's frozen. Or it's boiling. Never in between. You're either shivering in your rags or sweating so hard that your skin tastes like salt when it flakes off. One guy tries to take a break behind a pile of rocks. The foreman finds him. You look away. The guy doesn't come back. By noon, your arms feel like overcooked noodles. Someone hands you a crude spade. It breaks after 3 uses. You dig with your hands, then with a jagged rib of broken wood. The trenches must be perfect, or the wall above will collapse. That might sound dramatic until a section does collapse later that day, burying 2 workers. No one stops to dig them out. You eat whatever's in the bucket that gets passed around. It's gray, it jiggles, and it smells like wet hay. A fringe theory suggests early builders of the wall sometimes used animal glue or boiled bones in soup to stretch meals. Is that what this is? You don't ask. You just try not to gag. Night doesn't bring rest. Night brings more digging, under torches that smoke and sputter in the wind. You try to sleep once, curled up near a half-buried boulder. A rat crawls across your foot. You decide maybe it's better to keep digging. The stars look close enough to touch, and for a second, you wonder if dying out here would mean becoming part of something eternal. Then a guy next to you starts coughing so hard he spits blood, and you remember this isn't some grand destiny, it's an open-air graveyard. There's one old man who hums while he works. He claims he was a poet once. He also swears he saw a dragon flying over the hills the night before. You nod politely. Maybe he's crazy, or maybe he's onto something. After all, hallucinations are common out here. Some say the wall itself starts whispering to you if you stare at it too long. Oh, and did we mention your shift never ends? Because it doesn't. The only measure of time is the creak of ox carts and the occasional shout of collapse, followed by frantic scrambling. You don't even know how many days have passed. One guy tries to count by etching lines into a stone every morning. By the time he reaches 20, the foreman smashes his rock. Someone says there's a healer 2 camps over who can fix bruises with boiled bark and a chant. Someone else says that's just a pickpocket who pretends to be a healer while stealing socks. You don't bother to investigate. You don't have socks. At one point, you fall asleep on your feet. Literally. You wake up when your face hits the dirt. The foreman laughs. You've never wanted to punch someone so much in your life, but you don't. Because you want to survive. Not thrive. Just survive. So, let's review. You're conscripted. You're barefoot. You're sleeping with rodents. You're eating glue and fever dreams. And the only part of your body that doesn't hurt is the part that already went numb. And this was the easy part. The second day is worse. Not because your body hurts more, though it absolutely does, but because now you know what's coming. Yesterday was confusion and panic. Today is grim acceptance. You're no longer surprised that your bed is a patch of gravel, or that breakfast is a fist-sized lump of boiled starch with the flavor of wet socks. This is when you hear it for the first time, all for the glory of the emperor, said with no enthusiasm, like a line rehearsed too many times. The same phrase is stitched into tattered banners and muttered by overseers as if repetition will make it true. They tell you that the wall is a sacred mission, a divine defense against the chaos of the northern steppes. It's for the empire, they say, for your children, for history, but you're starting to figure things out. It's not about glory, it's about control. See, Emperor Qin Shi Huang didn't just want to keep the nomads out, he wanted to keep everyone in. The wall was one part defense, one part message. I own this land, and I own you. And what a message it is. Tens of thousands of bodies, laborers, soldiers, prisoners, all funneled into this mega project like gravel into a pit. You remember the poet from yesterday? He's been reassigned, not to a better job, just a deeper trench. Because here, poetic talent ranks just above isn't currently dying. A mainstream historical fact for you to chew on while you're hauling baskets of clay. During Qin Shi Huang's reign, it's estimated that 300,000 to 500,000 workers were conscripted into service for massive state projects like the wall, roads, and canals. Many of these were criminals or political dissidents. Not everyone was sentenced with a trial, some were simply unlucky enough to be near a tax collector in a bad mood. Your fellow workers are starting to resemble walking injuries. Eyes sunken, skin cracked, feet wrapped in whatever cloth they can steal. One guy wears a sleeve as a sock. Another just walks with a limp and pretends it doesn't hurt. You make a note not to get too close to anyone. You can't afford attachments, not when people disappear overnight. The rumor mill never stops. Someone whispers that entire villages are being uprooted and forced into labor camps like this one. That the emperor believes in uniting China not with culture, but with sameness. Standardized language, standardized laws, even standardized axle widths for carts. That's a real thing. By the way, Qin Shi Huang mandated it. Because if your carts can't run on the empire's roads, what good are you? Historians still argue whether the wall was truly effective in its early form. Was it really about stopping nomads? Or was it more about broadcasting imperial power? You're starting to lean toward the latter. After all, no one stops to build a wall if they're winning a war. You ask someone what happened to the people who refused to work. They point to a shallow mound nearby. Them, he says. You notice the mound moves slightly. It's not a grave. It's a burial in progress. There's a new foreman today. Slightly less shouting, slightly more smiling. You think maybe he's better until he shows off his favorite punishment, burying people up to their necks in sand and leaving them overnight for the wolves. You decide you preferred the shouting. The idea of escape flits across your mind. You imagine slipping away in the fog, hiding in the hills, maybe making it back to your village. But then you remember you don't have a village anymore. The taxmen cleared it out. You have nowhere to go and nothing but the wall, stretching across the land like a scar. Break time is a joke. There are no clocks, no bells, just the occasional grunt from a foreman and the collective instinct to stop when someone else does. But if you rest too long, you're marked. They keep track, not with numbers, with glances, with whispers, with a special stick that doesn't bruise, at least, not in ways that are easy to show. Some new recruits arrive today, wide-eyed and clean-faced, still clutching their satchels like they mean something. One even has a wooden comb. You don't even remember what your own name feels like in your mouth, and this guy is combing his hair. You give him a week. Lunch is something. You pick at it with your fingers. It might be rice, might be dirt. There's a strange tang to it. A fringe tidbit some guy offers. Apparently, crushed fire ants mixed into porridge make you stronger. You nod slowly. Decide to just eat around the red bits. The poet returns that evening. Or what's left of him. His face is pale. He mumbles something about how the wall hums when it's cold. You ask if he's okay. He doesn't answer. Just sits down and starts humming too. There's a scholar in the group who got arrested for writing a scroll critical of the Qin dynasty. He used to teach children. Now he stacks bricks. You ask him what's worse, being silenced or being forgotten. He shrugs. The emperor will be remembered. Will be mortar. As night falls, you try to remember your family's faces. The images blur. You wonder how long it takes to forget someone completely. You promise yourself you'll hold on to them at least until your hands stop working. You stare at the horizon. The wall's outline flickers in the torchlight. It's massive, yes, but it's also never-ending. It isn't a monument. It's a sentence. And you're only on page 2. By now, you've accepted that you're not leaving. The wall is your life. And your uniform? It's not stitched with silk or sealed with pride. It's whatever filth happens to cling to your skin after 10 hours of moving dirt and 10 more of praying the cold doesn't break your ribs. You wake up stiff. Not so stiff, like a dried piece of meat. Your legs don't want to straighten, your fingers curl in on themselves, and your skin? It's taken on a crust that no amount of spit can soften. You don't even bother brushing it off anymore. Dirt is warmth. Dirt is armor. Dirt is dignity. The air smells like sweat, coal smoke, and something else. Something sour. You realize it's you. Everyone stinks, but your personal bouquet has reached a level of potency you didn't think possible. You could pickle vegetables with your armpits, and you'd gladly do it if it meant a bite of actual food. What passes for clothing here is a tragic joke. You started this journey with what you wore when they arrested you. Probably a homespun tunic, maybe a pair of sandals. That was a week ago. The tunic's in shreds, the sandals are gone, and your feet are now wrapped in layers of sackcloth and stubborn hope. Most of your wardrobe is whatever you can scavenge. Discarded sleeves, animal hide scraps, or in one guy's case, fish skin. He swears it keeps his heels from cracking. Another guy has turned a chunk of bark into a shin guard. You've tried stuffing millet husks into your shirt for padding. It sort of works until they get wet. Then it's like hugging porridge. Mainstream fact time. Builders of the Great Wall often worked in harsh, remote regions with extreme temperatures, scorching summers, and brutal winters. Clothing wasn't provided. In some regions, laborers would layer rags, leaves, even straw, just to keep from freezing or burning. A lot of what you wear isn't about warmth. It's about shielding your body from the work. The ropes you haul are so coarse they'll strip the skin from your palms in an afternoon. So you wrap them in cloth, old bandages, horsehair, even paper, if you're lucky enough to find some. Doesn't matter. You'll bleed anyway. Historians still argue whether workers at different sections of the wall were treated equally. Some say that northern camps had slightly better provisions due to proximity to cities. Others believe every site was a disaster in its own unique flavor. Either way, you wouldn't know. Your provision today was a moldy radish and a splinter in your lip. You pass a man whose legs are wrapped in twine, not for warmth, for compression. His knees are failing, and the twine helps him walk without screaming. You make a note to copy him if your own joints ever give out, which they will, probably soon. Shoes. Those are for the rich or the lucky. Most here walk barefoot, or with shoes made of straw, rope, and prayer. You've learned to step carefully, not just for rocks and thorns, but for bones. They don't bury the dead fast enough, and the soil is too shallow in places. Sometimes a toe pokes up like it wants to say hi. One guy carves sandals out of discarded wooden slats. Ingenious. Until he trips and breaks an ankle. Now he lies under a tarp, muttering about a silver fox that keeps visiting him in his dreams. You're not sure if that's fever or folklore. Every evening, there's a brutal ritual, checking for lice. Not because anyone cares about hygiene, it's just that when you're itching too much, it means you're weak. And weakness gets noticed. You pretend not to flinch when your scalp gets raked with a sharpened stick. You're more afraid of being noticed than being hurt. There's an odd kind of fashion hierarchy here. The guy with the least rips in his tunic? Respected. The guy whose turban is still white? Feared. And the guy who has somehow kept a single copper hairpin without it being stolen? You would follow that man into battle. Someone tells you about a fringe superstition. If you wear a rabbit's foot around your neck, the mountain spirits will protect your bones from shattering. You laugh. Then you see someone weaving a charm from mouse tails. It's not funny anymore. You tie a knot in your rope belt for good luck. There's a woman in the camp who used to be a cloth merchant. She gives you tips on wrapping your hands so they don't blister as fast. She also has one working needle, which makes her more valuable than the foreman. At night, people trade her dried insects for thread repairs. Your skin starts to change. Calluses bloom. Cracks appear. Your shoulders turn leathery. Your back tightens. Your arms look like they belong to someone else, someone stronger, but far more miserable. And your face? You haven't seen it in weeks. No mirrors. No reflection except in puddles. One night you glance down and startle yourself. The man staring back is sunken-eyed, hollow-cheeked, and deeply unfamiliar. There's a game some workers play while they rest, describing what they used to wear. Fine robes, jade pendants, beaded shoes. It's half memory, half hallucination. You try to join, but all you can remember now is the texture of rope and the color of blood blisters. Every so often, a new group of laborers arrives. And every time, the same thing happens. They flinch at the smell, gag at the food, complain about the cold. You watch them with quiet pity. Give it a week, and they'll be barefoot too, wrapping their feet in moss and muttering about how the wind sounds like a baby crying. One day, a supervisor strides through wearing actual boots. Real, leather boots. The kind that don't leak when it rains. The kind that don't bite into your heel like an angry beetle. Everyone stops working to stare. He notices and smiles. You'll dream about those boots later. You'll imagine stealing them, running, never stopping. But then you'll wake up to the familiar ache in your bones and the soft crunch of lice in your sleeve. And you'll remember, there's no escaping the wall. Not barefoot, not dressed in mud and memory. Someone sneezes next to you loud, wet, and unignorable. A few heads turn, not with sympathy, but with suspicion. You all pause. Wait, he sneezes again. Just like that, he's marked. There's no such thing as privacy out here. You sleep elbow to elbow with strangers, your breath mingling with theirs, your clothes shared like playing cards. The wall doesn't just break your back, it makes you a cog in a very dirty, very contagious machine. This is your new family. The sick, the broken, the unwilling, the loud snorers, the chronic mutterers, the guy who chews his millet with his mouth open like it owes him money. You didn't choose them, but now they're the only people who know you're suffering firsthand. A ragtag mosaic of humanity glued together by blisters and bad luck. Some are criminals. At least, that's what the foremen say. But the line between criminal and annoyed a bureaucrat is thinner than you're betting. One man tells you he was a teacher who used the wrong map in class. Another, a baker whose bread was deemed too light. It's a coin toss: commit a crime or get accused of one. Either way, here you are. Mainstream fact. Under the Qin dynasty, people could be conscripted for minor offenses or even as punishment for other people's crimes. If your father resisted tax collection, you might end up here in his place. Collective punishment was a terrifyingly efficient tool of control. There's one guy who stands out: a monk. Bald, calm, always whispering to himself. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, it's usually to chant a verse or quote a proverb. He still tries to sweep a clear space around him with a twig, as if this cursed dust might respect holy ground. You start sitting near him at meals. His presence makes the millet taste a little less like spoonfuls of regret. Then there's Bo. Used to be a thief, he'll tell you that outright. Wasn't even a good one. He laughs between hauling stones. But I was fast, until they caught me. He has one eye and a sense of humor sharp enough to cut rope. He becomes your accidental mentor, showing you how to hoist a boulder without pulling your spine out through your belly button. On the other side of your trench is Lin, who doesn't talk. Ever. He digs, eats, sleeps, repeats. No smile, no groan. Someone once said he strangled a tax official and was too dangerous to execute, so they sentenced him to the wall instead. You're not sure if that's true, but you don't ask questions when he hands you a better tool without a word. People share things out here not out of kindness, but out of necessity. You trade the last half of your lunch for a strip of cloth to bandage your wrist. Someone else gives up a turn at the fire in exchange for protection from the bandits who sometimes sneak into camp at night. Yes, you heard that right. Bandits. Turns out even walls in progress can't keep out desperate men. They slip in like shadows, stealing food, tools, even people. That's why some of the laborers sleep in tight huddles. Not for warmth, for warning. Historians still argue whether these labor camps had any formal guards. Some believe soldiers patrolled them constantly. Others say supervision was sporadic at best, with cruelty doing most of the heavy lifting. You've seen both. The guards show up mostly when it's time to punish someone or collect a body. Then there's the young one, barely old enough to have facial hair, always smiling. He says his name is Foam, but everyone calls him Rut. He tells jokes. Some are funny, some are tragic in disguise. Like the one about a man who thought he was digging a well, but ended up in his own grave. You try not to laugh too hard. Your ribs still ache from yesterday's collapse. One evening, a strange old man limps into camp wearing a hat made of reeds and muttering about a great beast buried under the hills. No one knows where he came from. He just sits, stares at the wall, and whispers. You think about asking what he means, but then he smiles too wide and you decide it's better not to. Fringe tidbit time. Some oral legends claim sections of the wall were haunted, especially places where large numbers of laborers died. People spoke of screams in the wind, tools moving on their own, and faces in the stone. You haven't seen a ghost yet, but you've caught yourself talking to the wall once or twice. You find yourself growing attached to these broken people. That's dangerous, because they disappear, sometimes quietly, sometimes not. One night, the monk doesn't wake up. The next morning, his body is gone. No burial, no fire, just an empty space where his warmth used to be. Bo tells you not to grieve too hard. Grief is a luxury, friend, he mutters. They don't feed us enough to feel things. You lie in the dirt, arms aching, heart tight. Lin snores softly nearby. Fong mumbles in his sleep, something about peaches. The wind carries the sound of hammering from another camp. And somewhere far off, a scream echoes through the valley. You'd be terrified, but you're too tired. In the end, this isn't just forced labor. It's psychological warfare. They grind you down until you're grateful for half a bowl of gruel and a neighbor who doesn't snore. They call it unity. You call it survival. You don't know these people's real names. You probably never will. But if one of them collapses tomorrow, you'll lift their burden as your own. Because if you don't, it'll be your body that feeds the mortar next. You wake up with your face in the dirt, your tongue dry as old leather, and your shoulder burning with a fire that refuses to go out. No dream could survive in a place like this. Only noise, pain, and orders barked in a dozen dialects. Today, you're moved to a new work zone higher up, closer to the cliff edge. Congratulations. That means heavier loads, steeper climbs, and a slightly higher chance of falling to your death. The task: move bricks. Not small, neat ones, but massive slabs of stone roughly the size of your torso. Some are shaped, most are not. Each one a jigsaw piece in a puzzle made of exhaustion. You'll be hauling them uphill with nothing but muscle, friction, and a plank that splinters like old bamboo. No pulley systems, no wheels. Just ropes, sweat, and screaming foremen. If you're lucky, you get a shoulder pull. If you're really lucky, you get a second man on the other end of it. If not, you're the ox. The slope is too steep for carts anyway, and someone thought it was wise to line the path with loose gravel just to add a little death lottery to every step. Here's your mainstream fact. During the Qin dynasty, most of the original wall was built not with uniform bricks, but with rammed earth, stones, and tamped layers of soil and gravel. Only in later dynasties, like the Ming, did they use fired bricks and stone blocks extensively. But in the rugged terrain of the north and west, even Ming-era builders relied on raw muscle to hoist materials. Bo joins you this morning. Stone duty, he grunts, spitting into his hands. Nothing makes you question your existence quite like carrying a mountain up another mountain. You try to laugh, but it comes out as a wheeze. There's a system, if you can call it that. You form chains lines of men stretching up the slope, each one passing a slab to the next. Or you use a sled of logs, dragging the load like some miserable parade float of suffering. When it rains, it turns to chaos. Wet stone, slick mud, and shrieks as men lose their grip and the entire stack crashes down, sometimes into people. You hear about a guy who lost his hand. Not from crushing, he cut it off himself after it got pinned under a boulder. Better that than being left there. Someone invents a game. Guess the weight of your next rock. Loser has to carry two. You guess 90 gene, about 100 pounds. It's closer to 150. You carry both anyway. Your back will remind you of this mistake for days. You get creative, wrapping the stone in twine to gain grip, using your knee to pivot it onto your back, placing leaves between your shoulder and the slab to cushion the bone. None of it really helps, but trying makes you feel slightly less like a doomed ant. A younger worker nearby groans loudly. You hear the slap before you turn. The foreman doesn't tolerate complaining, not because it slows the work, but because it spreads. One man's misery is contagious. Better to crush it early. You find your rhythm. Step, brace, hoist, shuffle, drop. Again, the sun creeps higher. Your skin cooks. You're too tired to swat the flies from your face. Your shirt sticks to your back like it's part of you now. Fringe tidbit. In some sections of the Ming Wall, oxen and donkeys were used for hauling stone. But up steep or narrow passes, humans were more reliable. Why? Animals collapsed too quickly, and their bodies were harder to move once dead. A man, though, you just roll him downhill and keep working. At midday, you pause to suck on a rock. Not as weird as it sounds. It tricks your brain into thinking you're drinking. Bo has a flat piece of shale he swears tastes like cucumber. You nod like you believe him. Historians still argue whether the wall's supply chains were organized or improvised. Some sources suggest each camp had ration quotas and dedicated supply routes. Others paint a bleaker picture: materials and food arrived when they arrived, and men were expected to make do in the meantime. Based on the fact that your lunch today is nothing, you lean toward the latter. There's a man named Yuan who sings as he works. Not happily, more like a dirge in slow motion. His voice is rough, his melody off, but the rhythm helps. It gives your limbs a pattern to follow. You join in eventually, humming more than singing. Within minutes, half the line is moving in sync, like a centipede built of despair and determination. Then it happens. A cry, a shout, a crashing. A block goes loose, bouncing down the slope. Two men go with it. You hear one hit the rocks below, a sound you'll never forget, like a melon dropped from a rooftop. The other one, just gone. No one stops, not for more than a minute. The foreman says they'll check on it later. You know what that means. Another pit, another nameless grave. You glance at Lin. He doesn't blink, doesn't flinch, just keeps lifting. That night, your hands won't open. They're curled into claws from holding rope all day. You pee blood. You cough dust. You think about your family and can't remember your little brother's name. The wind howls like a voice with no mouth. And the wall? It keeps growing, like a living thing, swallowing stone and time. Indifferent, immense, immortal. You lie on your back and stare at the stars. Someone next to you mutters, "They say the wall will be seen from the heavens." You snort. Good. Maybe someone up there will realize it's built from bones. The wall takes everything. Your strength, your voice, your sleep. And eventually, it starts to take people. Not just through death, though there's plenty of that, but through something quieter. Disappearances. Not the dramatic kind, with screams in the night or wild escape attempts. Just gone. One day, the guy sleeping beside you doesn't get up. You nudge him. Nothing. The foreman checks his pulse with the same urgency he might inspect a broken shovel. A few muttered words. Then two others haul the body to the edge of the site, where it's dumped into a trench that wasn't meant for people, but gets used that way more often than not. That trench fills quickly, and they don't stop working around it. You dig, you tamp the earth, you stack bricks, all while standing a few inches above where a man once breathed. You glance at Bo. "We're building with the dead," you murmur. He just shrugs. They're lighter than bricks. Mainstream fact. It's widely believed that many laborers who died building the wall were buried directly into its foundations. Some scholars push back, saying there's limited archaeological evidence to support this claim. Human remains are rare in the actual wall. But let's be honest, when thousands die far from home and no one keeps count, bones tend to vanish. The wall eats time. You've been here what? Weeks? Months? It's hard to tell. The sun rises, the wall grows, people fall, and nothing really changes. The food rations get smaller. The bricks don't. The work never ends. You notice something strange. Supplies aren't arriving like they used to. Fewer oxen, fewer carts. The guards start borrowing from your meals. One guy says the Empire's attention is shifting. There's a rebellion brewing in the south. Troops are being moved. Grain is being redirected. You ask what that means for you. He laughs. It means you starve quietly while they argue over maps. Historians still argue whether the Qing's infrastructure could support its own ambition. The empire expanded rapidly, yes, but its logistics were stretched thin. Grand projects like the wall consumed enormous amounts of material and manpower. Some say it was overreach. Others say it was sheer hubris. Your stomach has become its own creature, moaning, twisting, snapping at nothing. One day you get a special meal. Dried beetles. Crunchy, high in protein, probably still moving. You pretend it's fish. A fringe tip from a passing worker. Eat dirt just a pinch if the hunger gets too bad. It tricks your belly. You try it. It works. Sort of. One of the guards begins selling food on the side. He hoards dried grain and offers it in exchange for labor favors. Want 5 extra grains of rice. Then carry his water bucket for the day. You do it. Dignity doesn't weigh as much as your ribs sticking out. The foremen start pushing harder. The pace picks up. Deadlines appear, as if the wall knows time is running out. Maybe the emperor's coming to inspect. Maybe there's fear of attack. Either way, no one sleeps much anymore. Lin collapses. Mid-lift. No noise, just a slump. You and Bo carry him to the side. He's burning up. Fever. His eyes are open, but not seeing. Someone pours water into his mouth. Most of it dribbles out. He's done, Bo says quietly. There's no medicine, just hope. And a piece of cloth dipped in stream water, if you're lucky. You lay Lin on a bed of straw that smells like rot. You sit beside him for a while, whispering nothing in particular. He dies that night. You bury him yourself. Then you return to work. A new crew arrives from the west. They look worse than you did when you first arrived. Half-starved, trembling, eyes darting like prey animals. Turns out they had a collapse. Entire section of wall gave way. Crushed 20 people. They're not even rebuilding. Just reassigned here. More efficient that way. There's talk now low, whispered talk that the wall isn't worth it. That the enemies it's supposed to stop haven't been seen in weeks. That maybe they're just watching from the hills, laughing. You wonder if the wall even works as a deterrent, or if it's more like a monument to collective madness. One night, Fong starts crying. Not sobbing, just soft, slow tears rolling silently as he stares into the fire. You don't say anything. You just sit beside him, offering the last scrap of millet from your sleeve. He takes it. He smiles. Next morning, he's gone. The guards say nothing. Bo just nods at the empty spot and says, he was too soft for this. But that's not really true, is it? The people who survive aren't the strongest. They're the ones who harden, forget, reshape their souls into unfeeling stones. You're not sure if that's something to admire or fear. A fringe superstition returns. Some believe the wall is cursed. That those who die here can't leave. That their spirits get bound into the stones. That their pain seeps into the mortar and makes the wall stronger. You start noticing things. Shapes in the bricks. Whispers when no one's talking. Cold spots that don't match the weather. You tell yourself it's nonsense. That it's just fatigue. That sleep-deprived minds play tricks. But you still find yourself speaking quietly to the wall sometimes. Not prayers. Not curses, just words. So you don't forget how. One night, you dream of a massive stone mouth, chewing endlessly, spitting out bones like seeds. You wake up biting your own arm. The next day, the foreman tells you there's a new trench to dig. You don't ask what it's for. Your back is crooked. Your knees ache before you even stand. When you move, your joints crack like dry branches. And yet, the foreman shouts again. Faster. Always faster. You're assigned to rope duty today. That means you're the mule. The guy in front hauls. The guy in back braces. You're in the middle, absorbing every jolt, every grind, every slip as the rope cuts into your palms. Your job is to drag enormous logs and stone blocks up ragged slopes with nothing but your body and the encouragement of whip cracks in the air. You used to think you understood pain. You didn't. Pain is now a second skin. It wraps your shoulders, crawls through your spine, and settles in the soles of your feet like hot stones. You don't walk anymore. You limp forward in a rhythm that feels less like locomotion and more like punishment. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Much of the Qin-era wall, particularly in mountainous areas, required human-powered transport over rough terrain. Workers tied ropes to logs, stones, and sleds, pulling them for miles through conditions where wheeled carts were useless. Laborers often worked in synchronized teams, but if one person failed, the whole effort failed. You feel that reality firsthand. If the guy behind you stumbles, the weight yanks you backward. If your grip slips, someone ahead screams. If the team isn't perfectly in sync, the entire load jerks like an angry ox. You all feel it equally, unfairly, violently. The ropes themselves are rougher than the foreman. Made of twisted plant fibers and animal sinew, they fray your skin like sandpaper. You wrap your hands in cloth, but it's already soaked with yesterday's blood. You try a new trick, stuffing straw between the rope and your palm. It helps, for about 10 minutes. Fringe tidbit. Some builders soaked their rope wraps in urine and ash, believing it would harden the fibers and make them tougher on the skin. You've seen people do it. You've done it. Pride doesn't last long when you can't grip your own spoon. And then there's the incline. You stand at the base of a slope so steep you question whether it qualifies as land or wall. A foreman points to the top, where a half-finished watchtower waits. "That's where it goes," he says. "Now move." The effort feels endless. Every step forward is followed by a slide back. The ground is gravel mixed with dust, and your feet struggle for purchase. You lean into the rope, your face inches from the ground, every muscle screaming as your boots, or what's left of them, scrape across stone. Your legs shake. Your chest heaves. The log inches forward like it's teasing you. Someone vomits behind you. No one reacts. Historians still argue whether work crews rotated tasks, or if laborers were stuck with a single duty. Some evidence suggests people were cycled between hauling, digging, and masonry. Others say specialized teams existed, but specialization meant being punished for failure in that specific role. Either way, you're pretty sure the guy behind you has been hauling rope for weeks. His back is arched like a crescent moon. There's a song Bo starts humming low, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. It syncs with the dragging. Step, pull. Step, pull. The whole team joins in after a while, like some tragic rowboat crew. You feel a strange comfort in it. A heartbeat made of agony and grit. The wind kicks up dust. It stings your eyes, turns your tears into mud. You keep pulling. The foreman shouts again. Faster. You don't even hate him anymore. You just pity the man who thinks screaming at ghosts will make them obey. You start counting your steps to keep your mind occupied. 1, 2, 3. Collapse. No brace. 4, 5. Every 10, you allow yourself a thought. What was your mother's voice like? Did she sing when she cooked? What did your brother's laugh sound like? You start to imagine answers. Not because you remember, but because it's easier than accepting that you don't. One man slips. The sled lurches. Bo screams, his leg pinned for a second before the stone shifts. You rush to help. The others hesitate because helping slows the work. Helping earns punishment. You know it. Bo knows it. You help anyway. You get 3 lashes for your kindness. Bo gets none. His leg is bruised but unbroken. He says nothing, but later that night, he gives you the last of his bean paste. That's the currency here. Pain traded for loyalty. Blisters exchanged for brief moments of human decency. And yet the work doesn't slow. The load must move. The tower must rise. You have to do more, even when your body begs to do less. You hear about another group nearby who resorted to cannibalism during a famine. Just a whisper, nothing confirmed. Still, you find yourself eyeing the cooked pot more suspiciously the next morning. A guard watches you stumble and mutters something about lazy bones. You wonder if he knows how irony works. Your shoulder gives out near dusk. Something pops. The pain is white and immediate. You think about collapsing. just sinking to the ground and never moving again. But the rope is still tied to your waist. If you go down, the others fall. So you don't. Instead, you scream into the dirt. And you keep walking. That night, Bo helps you tie bark around your chest to brace your side. He doesn't ask what happened. He just tightens the knot and grunts. Don't breathe too deep. You lie awake, your breath shallow, your hands shaking. You think about how the wall isn't being built by men. It's being built by what's left of them. The morning begins in silence. Not because anyone's rested rest is a memory now, but because no one dares to speak. The wind is strange today. Cold, sharp, and carrying something brittle on its breath. A change. The foremen aren't shouting. They're whispering. You notice them glancing up at the sky. Not the clouds, the stars. Even though the sun is already creeping over the horizon, they're looking at the places the stars were. Something is off. You're told to stop working for the day. No explanation. The stones lie untouched. The ropes sag quietly in the dust. For the first time in weeks, the wall seems to pause. And that's when you learn another truth. Out here, superstition builds just as much of the wall as mortar and sweat. Mainstream historical fact. During ancient construction, especially in remote frontier regions, work was often suspended for astrological reasons, religious holidays, or strange omens. Emperor Qin Shi Huang himself was obsessed with immortality, feng shui, and celestial patterns. His advisors consulted the stars before making any major decisions. You're handed a broom made of twigs and told to sweep the dust away from the fire pit. But not just to clean it, to clear bad luck. Someone else is burning dried hawthorn leaves to ward off sickness. A man in the corner draws strange symbols into the earth with his toe, muttering about spirits that live in stone. You roll your eyes until the foreman takes off his sandals, walks the perimeter barefoot, and chants something you don't recognize. That's when it clicks. Even he believes. And if the guy holding the whip is nervous, maybe you should be too. A fringe belief gets passed around camp. If someone sneezes 3 times before breakfast, it means the mountain is displeased. Today, 3 men sneeze. 1 gets slapped. 1 is told to pray. The 3rd gets reassigned to a trench no one ever returns from. You begin to see how fragile this whole operation is. Not just physically the rocks, the rope, the aching human bodies, but spiritually. There's no plan for what happens if the omens turn dark. Just fear. Primitive, unspoken, contagious fear. Feng used to laugh at this stuff. He would make fart noises whenever someone bowed to the wind. Now he's gone, and no one laughs. Someone sees a bird land on the scaffolding and start pecking at a brick. A dozen people stop working. That bird, apparently, is an omen. It means we forgot to honor the ground before digging. Bo whispers. You raise an eyebrow. You believe that. Bo shrugs. I believe I'm still alive. They aren't. Historians still argue whether the superstitions of Great Wall workers were organic, born of desperate minds, or enforced by local traditions and state cults. Either way, the belief systems here are as solid as the stones you drag. No work starts without a blessing. No trench is dug without spitting first to appease the ancestors. Later that day, someone coughs. Not the normal kind of rattling. What kind that makes everyone inch away. Work stops again. Not officially, but in slow, creeping pauses. The man coughs again. Then a 3rd time. He's isolated instantly. Not by order. By instinct. You all back away like he's on fire. Turns out he's just choked on his food. But it doesn't matter. His fate is sealed. He's sent to the healer, a guy with a gourd full of ash water and a talisman made of goat teeth. You won't see him again. Superstition becomes survival. If your tools fall, you tap the ground twice. If your shadow touches someone lying down, you whisper an apology. You start drawing little circles on your chest every time you hear a scream from another camp. Even you rational, tired, Sarcastic, you begin to play along. Because not playing feels dangerous. That night, a storm brews in the distance. Lightning flashes behind a distant ridge. Someone claims it's the Dragon King warning the camp. Another swears he saw a white snake at the edge of the latrine, another omen. White snakes mean death. You stare up at the darkening clouds and whisper, "If there's something watching, can it at least fix my knees?" No reply, just thunder. You dream that night of a woman made of brick, her face soft and sad, her voice a whisper of mortar and moss. She tells you to leave. You wake up in a cold sweat. You don't tell anyone. Not because you think it's nonsense, but because you're worried they'll believe you. In the morning, the foreman smears black soot under his eyes and ties a string of chicken bones to his belt. That's the official signal. Today is unlucky. All major lifting is halted. You dig instead, softer work. You dig like someone whispering into the earth. There's a quiet reverence in the camp now. People move slower, speak softer. No jokes, no songs, just cautious eyes scanning the sky, the hills, the stones. You think about how many beliefs are baked into this place. Not just architecture, but fear, ritual, desperation. The wall isn't just built with hands. It's built with paranoia. Even Bo, who once snuck into a noble's house and stole his wine, now bows before starting work. He catches you watching. "I used to steal jade," he says with a grin. "Now I say sorry to rocks." Life's funny. You nod. Because it's not that funny anymore. That night, the fire won't light. No matter how much kindling you use. No matter how dry the straw. You feel everyone glance at each other. Another omen, someone mutters. And no one disagrees. You start dreaming of food again. Not a feast, not even warm soup, just texture. Crunch. Salt. Anything besides the gritty, tasteless lump they hand you twice a day and call millet. You'd lick a boot if it had flavor. This morning's ration arrives late. A scoop of something gray, sticky, and questionably warm. You poke it with a finger. It jiggles. The man serving it shrugs. Today, we boil it longer. You do not ask what it is. Your stomach grumbles before you finish the bowl. So does Bo's. So does everyone's. It's the constant background hum now. Like the wind. Hunger has become a companion always there. Always whispering that maybe the next bite will satisfy. It never does. Mainstream historical fact. Sheen laborers were fed simple fair-boiled grains like millet or sorghum, occasionally supplemented with roots, dried vegetables, or bits of dried meat if they were lucky. But food shortages were common. Supply lines were long and unreliable, and the emperor's priority wasn't worker satisfaction, it was wall completion. You feel it in your bones. There's not enough to go around. You start noticing which workers are losing weight faster. Some look like dried-out tree roots, knotty limbs, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes. Won't look like that near the end. You now measure days by food, not by sunrises or shifts. Just bowls. 1 bowl means you've survived another day. 2 bowls. That's a festival. That's a miracle. Bo has a trick. He chews each bite 50 times. Tricks the brain, he says. Makes it feel like more. You try it. By chew 40, your jaw hurts, but the food's still glue in your mouth. Not more. Just slower. Then someone says the word meat. The whole camp freezes. It's just a rumor. A caravan was spotted downriver. With pigs, someone whispers. Live ones. But no one believes it. Livestock rarely makes it to labor camps. If it does, it's usually for the guards. Still, hope bubbles. People start listing their favorite foods like it's a prayer. Pork belly, garlic greens, grilled fish. Bo talks about roasted duck stuffed with honeyed rice. You swear you taste it for a moment until you bite your tongue and draw blood. The next day, something changes. You're served a new stew. It smells different. Not better. Just different. Everyone eyes their bowl. No one speaks. Fringe tidbit. In times of extreme famine, some Chinese labor camps reportedly used rats, insects, tree bark, and even shoe leather as food substitutes. It wasn't officially sanctioned, of course, but you live long enough on a starvation diet, and you'll boil anything that doesn't bite you first. Bo picks out something from his bowl, a round, gray chunk. He sniffs it. Not millet, he mutters. Not bark either. He eats it anyway. You do too. You have to. If you ask questions, you go hungry. If you go hungry, you slow down. And if you slow down, a man collapses during the midday haul. Not from overwork, just from sheer emptiness. You see his ribs move when he breathes. You can count each one like prayer beads. They leave him where he falls. That evening, he's gone. Quietly, unceremoniously removed. You begin to wonder if death is more like digestion, now part of the cycle. Bodies disappear. Meals continue. Nothing ever stops. Historians still argue whether large-scale famine truly plagued wall construction under Qin rule, or whether food deprivation was localized. Some scholars believe the harsh terrain and extended logistics doomed certain sites to starvation. Others say reports were exaggerated by later dynasties to make Qin look crueler. Either way, your stomach doesn't care about academic debates. At night, Bo shows you how to trap beetles. You build a tiny barrier from twigs near a fire and sprinkle a few crumbs inside. Insects wander in, looking for warmth. You catch 3. Roast them on a flat stone. Crunchy, slightly nutty, definitely better than the soup. You start checking the bottom of your bowl for extras. A stray bug? Fine. A dead mouse tail once. You still ate around it. One guy in your trench finds mushrooms growing near the base of the wall. Small, gray, soft. He eats them. Within hours, he's vomiting blood. Dead by dawn. The wall gets another brick. You never look at mushrooms the same again. There's a guard who sneaks in scraps from his meals, fish bones, chicken skin, even a boiled egg once. But he doesn't give them out for free. You want a taste? Carry his water. Shine his boots. Or worse, rat out someone trying to escape. Bo refuses. No meat is worth becoming meat, he mutters. You agree, but your mouth waters when you smell the fish. Then one night, something extraordinary happens. A storm. A proper one. Thunder. Rain. The whole sky rumbling. It pelts the camp with enough force to loosen the dirt. And when the storm ends, the land smells alive. The next morning, wild onions, sprouting along the riverbank like tiny green miracles. Bo finds them first. You dig with your bare hands. A dozen, maybe more. You boil them in muddy water. The taste? Sharp, spicy, real. That meal makes you cry. Not because it's delicious, but because it reminds you of a world outside this place. A world with flavor, with warmth, with choices. You hold on to that taste for as long as you can. But the millet returns the next day. So do the ropes, the stone, the shouting, and the hunger. Always the hunger. It happens while you sleep. Or, more accurately, while you're lying in a daze between pain and numbness, your ears tuned to the soft snoring and dry coughing of the men around you. A strange noise cuts through the night-fast feet, a muffled cry, and then the unmistakable twang of a bowstring. The bandits have returned. Someone yells. A torch is dropped. Shadows scatter like spilled ink, and then all at once, the camp erupts. You bolt upright just in time to see 3 figures sprinting into the chaos, faces covered, knives drawn, eyes wild with hunger. They don't want your life. They want what little you have. Your rations, your water, maybe your boots, if you have them. You scramble backward as one charges past, grabbing a sack of dried millet from a sleeping guard. Another pulls the blanket off a man who doesn't even wake up. It's like watching wolves raid a flock of dying sheep. Mainstream historical fact. Despite its reputation as a defensive structure, Early versions of the wall were often ineffective at repelling small raids or bandit attacks, especially before the Ming Dynasty fortified it with towers and permanent garrisons. In many cases, the wall itself was still under construction and vulnerable, just like the workers building it. Go tackle someone, not a bandit, a fellow laborer trying to steal his food during the confusion. You dive in to help. There's no time for reasoning, just fists, elbows, and desperation. You don't know who hits who. You don't care. You just fight. By the time the foreman restores order, 2 people are bleeding. 3 more are gone bandits. Laborers, who knows? 1 tent is on fire. The guards shout, swinging their cudgels like they've just remembered they have authority. But it's too late. The damage is done. In the aftermath, everyone moves differently. People glance over their shoulders more. No one sleeps with both eyes closed. You start hiding your food in your shirt rather than your tent. Bo buries his bowl under a rock. Lin sharpens a stick and keeps it under his bedding. Fringe tidbit. Some laborers crafted makeshift weapons out of tools, chisels filed into blades, bricks tied to ropes as clubs, not to fight invaders, but to defend themselves from each other. Hunger, fear, and scarcity turn even allies into threats. You hear whispers the next day. Some say the guards let the bandits in traded food for silence. Others claim the bandits were former workers, escaped weeks earlier, now returned with reinforcements. That one makes your stomach turn. You imagine foam, out there in the dark, gaunt and feral, sneaking into camps like a ghost. Historians still debate how often labor camps along the wall were targeted by raiders. Some sources suggest guards were underpaid or complicit. Others claim certain attacks were staged to justify harsher discipline. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear: you are never safe. The next night, a watch is established. Not by the guards, by the workers. Bo takes the first shift. You take the second. You sit by a smoldering fire with a stone in your hand, listening to the wind push through the valley. Every rustle in the brush sounds like footsteps. Every creak is a knife being unsheathed. You ask yourself, who are the real bandits? The ones sneaking through the dark, or the ones who dragged you here in chains and told you it was for unity? The work doesn't stop, not even for bandit attacks. The foremen double the pace the next morning as if to punish you for being robbed. Work faster, they shout, before the next raid. You climb higher. This section of wall overlooks a narrow gorge. You can see smoke from other camps in the distance. You wonder if they were attacked too. You wonder if anyone fights back. Lin does, or tries to. That evening, 2 unfamiliar men wander into camp, drifters from a neighboring site. One gets too close to the rations. Lin steps forward, doesn't say a word, just raises his sharpened stick. The drifters retreat. You start thinking about weapons differently after that. The stone in your pocket becomes your lucky charm. You sleep with your back against a boulder. You keep your hands near your throat when you lie down, in case someone mistakes you for an easy target. One afternoon, you spot movement beyond the ridgeline. A flash of metal. A rider? Maybe 2. Too far to tell. The guards don't seem concerned, which somehow makes it worse. The next raid comes 3 nights later. Smaller this time. Just 1 man. He tries to grab a cooking pot. Gets tackled. The guards beat him. Not to death, just enough to make a lesson. Then they let him go. You ask Bo why they didn't kill him. He shrugs. Might need him later. You think about how odd it is that you've adapted. You used to fear the idea of thieves in the night. Now it just feels like weather. Sometimes it rains. Sometimes you're robbed. Sometimes both. A fringe rumor floats around. Some guards hire bandits to scare the workers, keep them compliant. You want to say that's ridiculous. But then again, you just watched a starving man get released after raiding military supplies, and no one chased him. That night, you find a string of garlic bulbs buried near the fire pit. Someone must have hidden them during the chaos. You bring them to Bo. He looks at them like they're gold. You both eat one raw. It burns. It's glorious. Then the next day, your garlic is gone. Stolen. And the cycle begins again. You wake to silence. But not the kind you hope for, the comforting hush of early morning before the camp stirs. This is the eerie, frozen silence of cold. A cold so deep it bites before you move, sinks into your chest like iron, and stiffens your fingers into claws around your threadbare blanket. If you were lucky enough to fall asleep last night, it wasn't for long. The ground beneath you turned solid with frost. Your breath left a crust of ice on your shirt, and your toes, you're not entirely sure you can still feel them. Welcome to winter on the wall. Mainstream fact. In the northern regions of China, where much of the wall was built, particularly in places like Gansu and Inner Mongolia, temperatures could plunge below freezing for months. Builders worked through snow and ice, with inadequate clothing, shelter, and fuel. Exposure killed more than a few. Your first movement is cautious. You sit up slowly, teeth chattering, muscles locked. Across from you, Bo hasn't moved yet. His beard, what little he has, is frosted white. He opens one eye. Still alive? He croaks. You nod. He grunts. Unfortunate. You laugh just once, then clutch your ribs. Laughing hurts. You try to stretch your hands. Bad idea. Your knuckles crackle like dried mud. You wrap your fingers in cloth and blow on them, but it doesn't help. The wind does more than cut at hollows. It finds every hole in your clothing and whistles through like it's tuning an instrument of misery. Your work today? Laying stone at the top of a new incline. In the snow. With wet, frozen fingers. Fantastic. Bo grabs a chunk of wood and straps it to his wrist. Brace, he says. Stops it from locking up. You do the same, lashing bits of bark to your arms like makeshift armor. The guards don't care. They're wearing boots and sheepskin cloaks, passing around hot soup you're not invited to taste. Historians still argue whether winter construction truly continued at full pace, or if it slowed due to conditions. Some records suggest imperial deadlines didn't care about seasons. Other accounts hint that work was paused for major snowfalls, but that could mean a day, not a week. You start hauling buckets of frozen mortar uphill. It's so cold, the slush inside won't pour. You chip at it with a stick. By the time it loosens, your fingers are numb again. A man near you slips. Hard. He doesn't get up. His hand twitches once. Then nothing. The others move around him. Not over, just beside. The ground is too hard to dig. He'll stay there until the frost softens. Lin wraps a scarf around his mouth. It's filthy, but it holds in his breath. You copy him. Everything smells faintly of rot and smoke. Someone says the latrine pit froze solid. They're not wrong. Bo says he's considering setting it on fire just to clear the ice and the spirits. Speaking of which, superstition shifts in the cold. Now the talk is of ice demons. Spirits trapped in permafrost. If you hear whispering near the wall at night, you're not supposed to answer. If you do, they'll steal your voice and your warmth. A man 2 tents down hasn't spoken in 2 days. Just stares into the fire. No one asks why. Fringe tidbit. Some oral histories from frontier villages near wall construction sites tell of workers freezing mid-task, tools still in hand. One legend says a man was found upright, chisel frozen to stone, his eyes wide open. They buried him in the wall, still standing. You wrap your feet in extra cloth. Doesn't help much. The snow seeps through. You feel the first twinge of something worse than numbness, burning cold. Your toes feel like they're on fire, but you know what's really happening. Bo calls it black toe. If you're lucky, it stops at the skin. If you're not well, you won't be needing boots anymore. The foreman doesn't slow down. He paces with a torch, barking orders, teeth chattering between syllables. His lips are blue. Even he looks scared. The wall must continue, cold or not. That night, someone starts a fire too close to a support beam. The camp nearly burns. A section of tent collapses, smothering 2 men. One survives. The other doesn't. Bo digs the survivor out with a broken bowl. His hands are bleeding. You wrap them while he mutters, "Can't die from cold if you're already on fire." You've never seen a man shiver while sweating, but now you have. The wind howls like a woman in mourning. That's what the older laborers say. She's crying for those already buried, they whisper. You pull your blanket tighter. Your dinner that night is stone cold before you can eat it. Literally. Frozen in the bowl. You hold it over a candle. You eat the top half warm and chew the bottom like gravel. The days blur. Frostbite becomes normal. You learn how to move stiffly without breaking anything. A man near you loses 2 fingers. They turn black, then fall off. He picks them up and pockets them like lucky coins. You don't ask why. One night, a guard offers you a trade. 1 boiled dumpling in exchange for your blanket. You hesitate. Then you say no. Bo nods. Good, he says. Blankets don't melt. Another night, the camp wakes to a crunching noise. Wolves, maybe. Or something else. You light a torch. The tracks are odd. Long, narrow, dragged through the snow. Some say it's a man crawling away. Others think it was something crawling in. Either way, someone else is gone the next morning. You keep your back to the fire now, even while you sleep. You can't afford to face the dark. As the frost thickens and your breath turns to fog, the wall just keeps rising. Silent, unmoved. It doesn't care how cold it is. It doesn't care how many you've buried. It just wants more. You look up at the stars. They flicker like tiny, frozen fires. You whisper to them, "Do you see this?" No answer. Just wind. The first time you hear someone whisper about rebellion, it doesn't sound brave. It sounds tired. A low murmur passed between 2 men stacking bricks, like they're discussing the weather. One leans in. What if we just stopped? Stopped working. Stopped building. Stopped obeying. It sounds impossible. Ludicrous. But that whisper, it lingers. You ignore it at first. After all, rebellion isn't a solution. It's a death wish. Mainstream historical fact. Rebellions among forced laborers under Qin Shi Huang weren't uncommon, especially toward the end of his reign. Harsh policies, backbreaking labor, and mass conscription led to unrest that eventually exploded after his death. In fact, the dynasty itself collapsed just a few years after the emperor's passing, due in part to the suffering inflicted on its own population. But that collapse hasn't happened yet. And right now, you're still hauling mortar with frostbitten fingers and hoping your breakfast doesn't contain rocks. Still, the whispers grow. Another man claims he knows of a group planning to escape north. Over the hills, he says. Into the forest. Bandits live there. They won't kill us, they'll recruit us. You don't believe him, but part of you wants to. You even catch Bo staring at the mountains a little longer than usual. Then one morning, 4 men are missing. The guards don't panic. They've seen this before. They just gather everyone in the workyard. A foreman steps forward, rubbing sleep from his eyes like this is all a mild inconvenience. Escape is treason, he says. Treason earns the wall. The workers shift nervously. You hear someone gulp. Then they bring out the 5th man. The one who didn't get away. You don't know his name. He's young, sunburned, limping. His hands are bound behind him. His mouth is gagged. They walk him past the new trench. The unfinished section you've been digging for weeks. Let this be your reminder, says the foreman. Then he nods. The soldiers push the man in. Alive. You don't look away, but you wish you had. The thud. The choking. The silence. Then they tell you to fill it in. No ceremony. No delay. Just a job. Brick by brick, you cover the man who dared to believe in escape. Bo says nothing. Neither does Lin. You don't cry. There's no point. Your body stopped wasting water that way weeks ago. Fringe tidbit. There are ancient stories often whispered but rarely written that some sections of the Great Wall contain the bodies of the rebellious. Not just the dead, but the punished, buried alive as a warning, their bones sealed inside, their screams silenced by mortar and mud. That night, everyone is quiet. No jokes, no songs. The only sound is the wind. Even the guards speak in hushed tones. The wall watches, as always, unmoved. But rebellion doesn't vanish, it just goes underground. You notice new patterns. Workers pausing longer than necessary at the water barrels. Conversations that cut off when guards pass by. Tools being sharpened not for bricks, but for something else. Bo shakes his head. Too soon, he mutters. We're too broken. But he doesn't discourage them, either. You remember what the foreman said. Treason earns the wall. But what happens when the wall earns treason? Historians still argue whether mass uprisings ever occurred at wall construction sites. Some records were destroyed, others censored. But the idea that oppressed workers simply toiled and died quietly is a convenient myth. You know better. You felt the tension building with each wound, each insult, each grave. Then, one night, it happens. You're asleep when the first shout cuts through the air, followed by another. Then chaos. Someone's torch is thrown. A tent erupts in flame. A soldier screams, then goes silent. You bolt upright, heart pounding, and grab your rock, your only weapon. Bo's already on his feet, eyes wild. We running? You ask. He shakes his head. We're surviving. You duck as someone swings a shovel overhead. Not at you, at a guard. The shovel connects. Blood splatters the dirt. The guard drops. You run, but not to escape. To help. You grab another tool, swing wildly, keep your head low. It's not organized. It's not strategic. It's desperate. Men swinging tools like clubs, hurling bricks, tackling guards. You see Lin knock a man out with a fistful of mortar. You see someone else fall with a knife in their back. The guards start retreating. Fire spreads. The camp becomes a battlefield. Then whistles. Reinforcements. It ends as quickly as it began. By dawn, the fires are out. The dead are gathered in a row. Half are workers. Half are guards. Everyone is too shocked to speak. Bo's arm is bleeding. Lin has a broken rib. You're missing a chunk of your earlobe and hadn't even noticed. The punishment comes quickly. No food for 3 days. No fire. No medicine. And the worst, no burial for the dead. They lie there, swelling in the sun, faces twisted in agony. You're forced to work beside them. That's the real punishment. Shame. Not a failure. Of daring to hope. But something's changed now. You've seen that they bleed. You've seen that some can fight back. And deep down, you know the wall is not invincible. Not to frost. Not to famine. And certainly not to fury. You don't count the years anymore. Not that you ever really did. Time out here is measured in calluses, in bricks laid, in friends lost. But today, it hits you. You've changed. You were taller once. Not in height, but in spirit. Your steps were longer. Your back was straighter. You used to look forward toward escape, toward a future, toward anything at all. Now, your eyes stay low. Not just from caution, from habit. The wall keeps growing, tower by tower, brick by brick, while you, day by day, shrink. Mainstream historical fact: the construction of the Great Wall, especially during the Ming Dynasty centuries later, resulted in vast networks of walls, towers, barracks, and storage units. But in the earliest dynasties like Qin, progress was brutally slow, especially in harsh terrain. Workers might spend months completing a single section, repeating the same motion tens of thousands of times. You've been assigned to the same stretch of stone for over a season. You know every creak in the scaffold, every groove in the rampart. You've built it with your hands, your skin, your blood. And still, it isn't finished. Bo says nothing these days. He just grunts. His shoulder hunches now, permanently sloped from years of hauling. Lin barely limps anymore. Not because his leg got better, but because the limp has become his walk. Even your voice has changed. Rougher, shorter. You don't waste words. You say just enough to survive. You remember the first time you came here. You spoke in full sentences. Laughed, even. Now, if you manage 3 words in a row without coughing, it feels like a speech. Historians still argue whether conscripted workers in ancient China had any chance of returning home. Some say service was supposed to be temporary. Others insist most were worked to death. Based on your surroundings, you've drawn your own conclusion. Every day is heavier than the last. Not because the bricks get bigger, but because you get smaller. Bit by bit, your strength fades. Your hands tremble. You drop tools more often. The foreman sees. He doesn't yell. He doesn't need to. He's waiting for you to break. Some do. Quietly. A man near you sits down mid-shift. Won't move. Just stares at his hands. They drag him away. You never see him again. No one asks where. Fringe tidbit. In some areas, workers began to believe that losing their shadow was a sign they were near death. Whether hallucination or metaphor, it became a common omen. If your shadow didn't follow you one morning, if it looked too short, too pale, they said it meant your spirit was already fading. Bo tells you one evening that your shadow looks thin. You laugh. Kind of. Then cough. The sound rattles in your chest like dry coins in a gourd. He changes the subject. The next day, you trip on your way down the scaffold. A short fall. Not far. But when you land, your knee doesn't bend right anymore. It locks, then shakes. You sit for too long. The foreman notices. You done? He asks. You don't answer. He walks away. You realize, with a chill, that you've crossed some invisible line. You're not worth whipping. You're not worth shouting at. You're wasting away. You try to keep up. You push harder. You carry what you can. But you feel it now. The sharpness behind your eyes. The tremor in your fingers. The thoughts that don't finish themselves anymore. And the wall, this towering spine of stone, doesn't care. It grows regardless. It thrives on your bones, your days, your dwindling hopes. Vo lifts the bricks you can't. Lin braces your ladder. Neither says anything. They know. They felt it too. That night, you look up at the wall's newest layer. Smooth. Uniform. It glows faintly in the moonlight. You remember laying those bricks. Each one weighed twice as much when you started. Not physically, but spiritually. Every brick was another day you hadn't escaped. Another nail in your fate. But now, you just place them. You don't even think. You're part of the wall now. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. Literally. The lime dust you breathe. The mortar under your nails. The stone dust ground into your bones. You don't walk the wall. You are the wall. People talk about the wall of 10,000ly. That's how far it stretches, how great it is. But no one ever says how many lives it took. How many voices it silenced. How many yews it swallowed. Fringe rumor time. Some say the wall itself is alive. Not in the magical sense, but in the sense that it feeds. On motion. On time. On the labor of the forgotten. That if it ever stops growing, it will collapse not structurally, but spiritually. The price of immortality is sacrifice. Always has been. You believe that now. One morning, you see a crack in a fresh brick. Just a hairline fracture. The others don't notice. But you do. You stare at it. A flaw. A weakness. A whisper of rebellion. You don't fix it. You just move on. You notice it one morning while laying bricks the face. Faint, sunken into the stone, just beneath your fingers. It's not carved. Not painted. It's like the rock itself decided to remember. 2 hollow eyes, a flat nose, a mouth in mid-scream or mid-sigh. Gone before your second glance. You blink. Shake your head. Keep working. But then you see another. On the next brick. A different face, older, worn, eyes closed. And then another. You don't say anything. You don't want to. Because the moment you say it out loud, it becomes real. Still, the feeling won't leave. The wall is watching you. Not in a metaphorical way, not the poetic history has its eyes on you nonsense they chant in the cities, but in the literal, icy way that makes your neck itch and your heart beat faster. Mainstream historical fact. The construction techniques used in early walls included reusing stone from older ruins, burial mounds, and temples. Some bricks had inscriptions, names, prayers, even curses written by builders or etched by officials. Over time, many of these were worn away, but some have been recovered with haunting messages. Please remember me. I had a name. That night, you dream of the faces again. They move, not in the usual way of dreams, flickering or surreal, but with perfect stillness, like statues waiting to blink. In the morning, you find yourself staring at the wall as you work, searching, wondering. You stop seeing bricks and start seeing souls. Bo notices. He leans over. You're doing it, aren't you? You glance at him. What? He lowers his voice. Seeing them. You say nothing. He nods. Don't look too long. You won't come back. You want to laugh, but you can't remember how. Later that day, Lin drops his trowel. He stares at a section of the wall so long the foreman slaps him. He doesn't blink, just keeps looking. Eventually, he walks away, into the woods. No one stops him. Fringe tidbit. A whispered belief among certain workers was that if you stared at the wall too long, especially at dawn or dusk, you risked joining the mortar. Not physically, but spiritually. Your memory would get absorbed, your name forgotten, your soul trapped in the stone. Some even claimed this was how the emperor planned to make the wall eternal, by binding spirits to it, one life at a time. Bo starts chanting under his breath as he works. It's not a song, not anything in a language you recognize. You ask what it is. Something old, he says. To keep the stones quiet. You start doing the same. There's a section of the wall that feels colder than the rest, even in the sun. You avoid it. Everyone does. No one says why. But if a brick slips from your grip and rolls into that corner, you leave it. You're not sure when it started, but now the nights have voices. The wind doesn't sound like wind anymore. It hisses, murmurs, cracks like bones instead of branches. You hear your name once. Maybe. You hope not. You ask Bo if he thinks the wall remembers. He doesn't look up. It wants to, he says. It just needs enough of us inside. Historians still argue whether tales of hauntings and spiritual residue along the wall were products of stress-induced hallucinations or cultural expressions of grief. But the sheer number of ghost stories tied to its construction sites is staggering. Camps once described men waking up with bloody hands and no memory of the night. Entire scaffolds collapsing without explanation. Workmen vanishing into trenches never meant to be opened. One morning, a new man joins your crew. Tall, young, eyes too bright. He hums while he works. He smiles. Within days, the light fades from his face. He begins talking to the wall, not about it to it. He whispers apologies into the bricks. He presses his forehead against the mortar like it's a confession booth. Then he stops showing up for work. You don't ask where he went. The guards grow uneasy too. One paces more than usual. Another keeps rubbing his arm like something's under his skin. They pretend everything's normal, but they walk faster through certain sections. Never alone, never at night. You start seeing shadows where none should be. Faces in flickers of torchlight. One night, you see your own reflection in a puddle, and it doesn't move when you do. You stop drinking from that puddle. One of the elders says the wall is hungry, not just for labor, for memory. That the more people forget you, the more it eats. You laugh at first. Then you realize you haven't thought of your family in days. What did your mother's voice sound like? What was your brother's name? You try to remember, but it's gone. Just gone. You whisper their names to the bricks. just in case. So the wall will remember, even if you can't. That night, you dream again. But this time, you're inside the wall. Your arms are stone. Your eyes are closed. You're silent, but you're not alone. You're surrounded, shoulder to shoulder. All the others, waiting. The dream ends with a whisper, "You'll stay too." You wake up screaming. No one flinches. They've heard it before. You knew it would happen eventually. Not a dramatic collapse. Not a hero's end. Just a moment. A crack. A stutter in your step. A brick slipping from your hand. A small sound, a grunt. A thud. A sudden silence. You fall. Your leg doesn't move right. Your hip throbs. Something's torn. Maybe broken. You don't know. You don't care. The dust settles around you like a blanket. Bo is the first to reach you. He crouches beside you quietly. Looks into your face. Sees it. "It's time, isn't it?" he asks. You nod. Just barely. Mainstream historical fact. Thousands of laborers are believed to have died building the Great Wall during the Qin dynasty alone. Records of individual deaths were rarely kept. In many camps, when a worker became too injured to continue, there was no system for care, only a quiet removal. Sometimes their bodies were used to reinforce the very foundations they once helped raise. The others don't speak as you're lifted. They've seen this before. Too many times. You're not the first. You won't be the last. They take you to the edge of camp, past the fire pits, past the broken tools, past the sleeping dogs and snoring guards. And then further. Bo stays with you the whole way. Lin, too, limping beside him. You don't talk. You don't cry. There's nothing left to say. At a trench just beyond the wall's base, they lower you down. It's already partially filled. Dirt, rocks, and others. You see the curve of a skull. A hand turned to bone. Someone's foot, still wearing the scraps of a shoe. You're not shocked. You're home. Fringe tidbit. Some sections of the wall were so remote that burial became impractical. The dead were laid to rest where they fell, shallow graves dug beside the worksite, or bodies packed into stone cavities, sealed by the very mortar they once mixed. You lie there a while. Bo sits beside the pit, chewing something. Maybe garlic. Maybe bark. You don't ask. "I'll remember you," he says. You try to smile. "I'll even make something up," he adds. "Tell them you escaped. Say you rode a horse out of here, fought your way through guards, disappeared into the mountains." You chuckle. It hurts, but it's good. "Make sure the horse is big," you whisper, "and white, with gold eyes." Bo nods solemnly. "Of course. A magical horse, fast enough to outrun the emperor himself." You look up at the sky. It's cloudless. Blue. Wide. Funny, you think. You almost forgot what color it was. You close your eyes. Not to sleep. Not yet. Just to feel. The ground beneath you is cold. The dust in your mouth tastes of lime and ash. You listen to the sounds of the wall above. Bricks being stacked, tools clinking, men grunting, boots scraping. The world moves on. Then someone calls Bo's name. "Work resumes." He doesn't get up. Not yet. You open your eyes again. Look at the trench wall beside you. There's a crack in the stone. It looks like a smile. Or maybe a grimace. You whisper something. Not a prayer. Not a name. Just a sound. Just to hear your voice. And then Bo stands. Lin gives you one last look. They leave. And the wall doesn't pause. Not for you. Not for anyone. Historians still argue whether the sacrifice of laborers was ultimately worth it, whether the wall achieved its strategic purpose or was merely a monument to fear. The truth is, you never cared. You didn't build it for history. You built it because they made you. And now, they'll build it on top of you. You feel the first shovel of dirt land beside your arm. It's soft, almost gentle. Another follows. And another. You close your eyes again. The darkness is quiet. The wall looms above you. Immense. Eternal. Indifferent. There's no ceremony. No marker. No prayer. Your name vanishes without echo. The next morning, the trench where you were buried looks just like the rest of the foundation, smooth, level, anonymous. A new row of bricks is laid over you, quick and even. Someone tampers the mortar with a flat stone. No one says your name. No one pauses. Not because they don't care, but because there's no time. The wall must continue. Mainstream historical fact: Qin Shi Huang's grand projects, including the wall, were designed not for the benefit of individual citizens, but to symbolize the power of a centralized state. The individuals who built these wonders were rarely remembered. The tomb of the emperor contains over 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers, each with unique features. The real soldiers and workers? Most remain unnamed, lost beneath the soil. You're gone, but above you, the work goes on. Bo returns to his place in the line. Lin lifts another brick. The days stretch forward, and eventually, your face fades from even their memory. Your bones settle beneath the mortar. Your voice becomes the wind between the towers. Tourists arrive centuries later. They bring cameras and bright clothing. They laugh. They pose. They walk on the very path that was your grave, snapping photos with captions like epic views. And bucket list checked. They admire the majesty, the scale, the human effort, but not the humans. Fringe tidbit. In some regions, particularly along the older sections of the wall, villagers still leave small offerings, food, incense, coins on certain stones. Some say it's to honor the builders. Others say it's just old habit. But the stones that draw offerings aren't the grand ones. They're the ones with hairline cracks. The ones with stains that never wash off. Historians still argue whether the Great Wall actually protected the empire. Some say it kept out invaders. Others insist it was propaganda and stowed away to show the might of a ruler who feared dissent more than war. The truth, as always, is buried somewhere beneath the bricks. Maybe near you. One day, a scholar runs their hand across a section of wall. Curious, they say. The mortar here is different. Thicker. Older. They scribble something into a notebook. Then walk on. No one ever digs. No one ever listens for the silence beneath. But the wall remembers. It remembers your hunger. Your cracked hands. Your frozen breath. Your hope that someone, someday, might care enough to ask what it cost. The wall isn't evil. It's just what's left when human ambition forgets human cost. You are the price of greatness. And now, greatness walks across your bones in souvenir sandals. Now, let's slow everything down. Take a long, deep breath in. Let it out slowly, just like the final dust settling over that ancient trench. As you lie back, imagine the wall stretching far into the dark horizon, quiet now. The chaos is gone. The firelight has faded. No shouts, no burden, no fear. Just soft wind tracing along the top stones, humming low like a forgotten lullaby. The world has moved on. The emperors are gone. The dynasties have risen and crumbled like the sand beneath your sleeping form. But the wall remains, not as it was, but weathered, cracked, softened by time. And beneath it, you now part of something older than memory, steadier than stone. The faces in the wall have closed their eyes. Even Bo's story is dust now. Lin's limp? Gone. Just footsteps along a winding path, carried away by the feet of strangers who will never know what lies beneath. Let your breath settle with theirs. Let your mind soften like the mortar. Let your bones rest where the weight no longer presses. You don't need to remember the pain. The wall does that for you. You just need to sleep. So close your eyes now, drift gently, and feel the stones grow warm around you, like the earth tucking you in. You've done enough. The wall can wait.